Welcome into the Logan Ward Show, episode 2. Excited to have y'all here. Got a lot to talk about today, and I think we have some pretty good topics. And, sometimes the way that this business works, since it is a constantly changing, ever-moving landscape, and there is real-time news and things like that, sometimes your plans change. So I had here written down a whole thing about the possibilities of Bradley Beal being traded. I had a whole, kind of laid it out with the Phoenix Suns, what it might look like with the Miami Heat. And then, of course, as I'm doing that, he is traded to the Phoenix Suns, at least in principle. I don't think it is finalized yet. The league hasn't said that it is finalized, but they are working on it, and they have a deal in place that they're just kind of touching up and finishing up on. But I want to talk about this Bradley Beal trade because I find this very interesting that there's a perception in this league that big threes, stacking teams like this actually wins. And that's not the case. I think you have some exceptions, but most of the time, this does not work out. And I'll give you some of examples. We look at the Warriors as a culmination of all this talent and coming together. The difference is that the Warriors were homegrown. Steph, Clay, and Draymond were drafted by the team, developed by the team, and they really fit a style that the team wanted to play. And of course, Clay and Steph are two of the all-time greatest three-point shooters in league history, and Draymond Green is a really good floor facilitator, defensive player. So Draymond, I don't think, is a star like some of these other people are, but Steph and Clay and Draymond, they had this run of a dynasty in those years. The difference is then they brought in Kevin Durant. Okay, so you say, well, that is team up, right? And I guess to a certain extent it is because Kevin Durant came into that. However, I still think that the Warriors probably could have won another championship, and you do see last year, they do win a championship and beat the Celtics in the finals and win another ring. So the Warriors were a team that was homegrown, didn't go out and get a bunch of talent or accumulate talent the way that, some of these other teams have tried. LeBron James, everyone says, he's kind of been getting these super teams together, and LeBron James is the one person where it's actually worked. LeBron got the team in Miami together, won 2 championships, and then went to Cleveland, got a championship because he had Kevin Love, and they drafted Kyrie Irving with the pick that he when he left to Miami. LeBron's the only guy, really, if you look at it, that has been able to form a team like this and win. Kevin Durant has tried multiple times. He won in Golden State. He tried to do it in Brooklyn. It didn't work. And now Kevin Durant has another opportunity with another big 3, or maybe even big 4 if you add DeAndre Ayton in there, with the Phoenix Suns. But it doesn't happen like this often. This doesn't work. I mean, look at the 76ers. The 76ers tried to bring in James Harden with Joel Embiid and some of those players. Didn't work. I think that we have this conception and this perception that with these players and with these teams, they're kind of just building super teams, and that these super teams actually win championships. That is not the case. Look at the last couple of champions. You have the Denver Nuggets, who absolutely, they are not a dynasty or a juggernaut in terms of star power. Jamal Murray is a really good player. Nikola Jokic is one of the top 5 players in the league, but they have a lot of depth. Last year's Golden State Warriors, yes, they have Steph Curry, who was playing out of his mind in the playoffs last year. They have Klay Thompson, but you had Jordan Poole and Kuminga, and you had some of these players that stepped up big in the NBA Finals, and they had a lot of depth to their team, and they weren't, 3 stars at the top that were dominating the game. Same thing with the Milwaukee Bucks. Milwaukee Bucks with Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday and Giannis. That's not a big 3 in terms of a lot of scoring and star power. So these teams that have won championships in the last couple of years, they are not a star power top 3 heavy team. Even when you had the Lakers win it in 2020, LeBron and Anthony Davis obviously were really good, but you had Alex Caruso, KCP. Those are just nice, really good role players. So what does this mean for the Suns? They're going to be a lot of fun to watch in the regular season, and I think that sometimes as fans, we want people to try to go out and win a championship, but in terms of a business perspective, this might be a great deal, right? You now have 3 stars in this league, and you can probably get a lot of people in your building in regular season games where maybe you wouldn't if you didn't have these stars. So Bradley Beal to the Suns, I think this is going to be very interesting because we know that in this league, you need depth. And I saw this stat, and I didn't believe it at first, and I had to go look it up. But with just their 4 players, by the way, Suns only have 5 players under contract now. Just with their top 4 players, they are already over the luxury cap. They're already over the luxury cap with their 4 players, and Bradley Beal, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and DeAndre Ayton. So you only have 5 players on the roster. 4 of your players are putting you over the luxury cap, and you're going to try to build out a championship team. When the Suns went to the NBA Finals a couple of years ago, I thought that was a really good team. You had a veteran in Chris Paul kind of leading the offense, your bona fide scorer in Devin Booker. You had a defensive anchor who, I know that DeAndre Ayton hasn't been great defensively, but you had someone at least clogging up the lane in DeAndre Ayton. And you had a lot of great role players. I mean, Mikal Bridges is, I think, one of the top wing defenders in this entire NBA. And Cam Johnson can shoot the ball, is a big body, can defend a little bit, and is really good in catch and shoot 3 situations. You had those players. You had Cameron Payne. You had a really good depth and a really good all-around team. Now, who are you going to build this with? Who are you going to bring in that is going to take the amount of money that you can offer them now that you are over the luxury tax? And I understand that you're just going to have to pay it, and I get that. However, I think that there is something to owners not wanting to get way past that luxury tax. So now you're going to have to get 7 players for relatively cheap. I mean, in terms of the money that you have and trying to build a roster, your roster's probably not going to be great besides those 4 players. And let's be honest about this. Kevin Durant is getting older and playing less games than he has been. And, you're probably booking, maybe 60 games for Kevin Durant in a regular season now because of the injuries, and then you wanting him to be rested. Devin Booker's played a lot, but DeAndre Ayton's been hurt in and out of the lineup. So I understand a team wanting to go all in and try to win a championship. I don't think that this is the correct thing to do. When you look at the Western Conference, which is the better of the two in terms of depth, you have the Nuggets, who are your defending champion. You have the Lakers that are going to come back, I think, next year and still be contending. I think they've kind of figured out some things at the trade deadline, and I think that they could be contending at the end of the year. You have the Memphis Grizzlies, and we'll get to Ja Morant here later on in the show. But you have Ja Morant, and you have a pretty young core. You're not going to bring back Dylan Brooks, which I think actually helps the Memphis Grizzlies. But you have them. Of course, the Suns are right there at the top of it. But this is a tough conference. I'm not even mentioning the Mavericks with Luka and Kyrie, who I think will figure it out a little bit next season. This is a really strong conference. And I think that without the depth, I don't think that this Phoenix Suns team is a championship contender. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Let me know what's your thoughts about that. Are the Suns actually contenders, or are they kind of pretenders? Let me know. Okay, I want to talk about this Chiefs and Bengals rivalry. I think is great. It's great for the NFL. I think that it is a really good rivalry because I do genuinely believe that these two teams respect each other and understand that they are a really good team on the other sideline, both of them. And I think that this is becoming a real rivalry. I don't think that they like each other. I think they respect each other, but I don't think that these two teams like each other. And when you have players like Orlando Brown, who wins a championship with the Chiefs at left tackle and then moves over to the Bengals, yeah, I think that kind of stings a little bit if you're the Chiefs because you are losing him to the one team that has kind of given you fits the last couple of years. So years ago, people thought that the Steelers and Patriots were a big rivalry. You had Belichick and Brady, and then you had the Steelers with the three Bs, Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell, Ben Roethlisberger, Mike Tomlin's a great defensive coach. You had a rivalry between the Steelers and the Patriots. But when you really look at the numbers, it really wasn't a rivalry. The Patriots kind of dominated that. And in order for something, I think, to actually be a rivalry, no matter how much you actually hate that other team or you dislike that other team, you actually have to win some games against them in order for it to be a rival. I went back and looked, and the Patriots and Steelers have played 7 times in the postseason. 7 times. The last time that they played was 2017 in the conference championship. The Patriots are 6-1 all time against the Steelers in the postseason. And this isn't all during the 3B era of the Pittsburgh Steelers. They only played once, actually. In 2017, they played in the conference championship, which, of course, the Patriots won. So, the Patriots and Steelers aren't necessarily a rivalry. But what does make this rivalry? Well, with the Bengals and Chiefs, both teams have won, right? Last season, the Chiefs beat the Bengals to go to a Super Bowl. The season before that, the Bengals beat the Chiefs in the AFC title game to go to a Super Bowl. However, the Chiefs have the ring count. They're 2-0 in terms of championship rings. And the Bengals are 0-1. This rivalry has the trash talk. And what kind of made me think of this was Jamar Chase. And if you haven't seen it, you can go look it up. Jamar Chase was asked about who the best quarterback in the league because they asked Joe Burrow, and Joe Burrow said it was Patrick Mahomes, obviously. And so someone asked Jamar Chase, hey, what do you think about Joe Burrow saying that Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the league? And Jamar Chase said, Pat who? Which, of course, got some laughs in the locker room, all that stuff. Well, a couple days later, it's the Patriots ring ceremony. Patrick Mahomes puts up his 2 rings on Instagram and says, that's who. Talking about his Super Bowl rings. That's some trash talk there. I love that. But it has the trash talk. These two teams don't like each other. There is a real rivalry there. They respect each other, but they do not like each other. I think, obviously, you have the quarterbacks. In terms of, in my quarterback rankings, and I'm actually going to do position rankings here in the next couple of weeks as we gear up for the football season. But in terms of quarterbacks, you have, in my opinion, the top 2 quarterbacks in the league in Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes. You have the 2 best quarterbacks in the league. In coaches, you have Andy Reid, who's obviously a Hall of Fame coach. And I'll be honest with you, I think that there have been people that are unfair with Zach Taylor, but you have to give him the benefit of the doubt at this point that he is a good coach. You have to give it to him. Because if he wasn't, he would have already been gone by now. This team wouldn't have reached its potential if he wasn't a good coach. All right? So I'm not saying that Zach Taylor is on the level of Andy Reid, but you have to give at least some sort of credit because in the last couple of years, the Bengals have been in the AFC title game. They did lose a Super Bowl, but was just dominated by the Rams defensively. But I think that you have to give Zach Taylor the benefit of the doubt that he is a good coach. So you have 2 coaches that are good coaches. And then you have the playmakers. Jamar Chase. You have Jamar Chase. You have Travis Kelce. You had Tyreek Hill. He's moved on, obviously. But you have, Pacheco, Pacheco is a really good playmaker as a rookie for this Chiefs offense. You have, last year you had Juju, who maybe not be the best player, but is definitely a playmaker when he has his hands on the ball. And of course, the Chiefs have the best playmaker in the league, and that's Patrick Mahomes. For the Bengals, you have T. Higgins, you have Jamar Chase. Joe Mixon has been in and out of the lineup for injuries, but I think that Joe Mixon is a really talented back in this league. So you have the playmakers defensively as well. Trey Hendrickson with the Bengals. You have Chris Jones on the defensive front for the Chiefs. You have the players. And in the last 2 seasons, these two teams have played 4 times. Once in the regular season and once in the postseason. Now, the Bengals are 3-1. They are 3-1 in those games. Of course, the one loss coming in this last year's AFC title game, but they had beaten the Chiefs earlier in the regular season. But what also makes this a rivalry is that these games are always close. Each of those 4 games that I just mentioned that they've played in the last 2 seasons, all 3-point games, all coming down to the last couple of possessions. That's a rivalry. That's when you know your teams are good, you're well coached, and it's just who executes better that day. So I love it for the league. I think the league needs rivalries like this. We talk about the 49ers and the Cowboys in the 90s and the 80s. We've, kind of, I think, been we've kind of been shortchanged in terms of rivalries in the NFL, but this one really is a rivalry, and it's something that I think is great for the league. And of course, I'm sure they're going to be marketing this rivalry coming soon. All right, we're going to take another quick break. Coming up, we'll talk Ja Morant suspension, 25 games. Do I think it's fair? That's coming up here on the Logan Ward Show. All right, Ja Morant suspended 25 games. This came out shortly after the NBA Finals. I think that it was funny. A lot of people, I think, were actually more interested in this Ja Morant situation and what the actual punishment was going to be more than the NBA Finals. You saw all over Twitter people saying like, all right, the NBA Finals is over. Adam Silver come out and announce the Ja Morant suspension at the podium, which would have been a hilarious thing. Obviously, that did not happen, and it would never happen. But Ja Morant suspended 25 games. And I've seen a lot of different perspectives on this. I think that a majority of people, and I think that the consensus is that this is fair. That this is a fair suspension for Ja Morant. And a lot of people, I think, there are some people that are upset the fact that obviously having a gun in your possession is not illegal in this country. And I understand that. However, there are different rules for different companies and different people. That's the reality that we are living in. That's the reality that we've always lived in. There are different rules for different types of people. There are different rules for different types of professions. And Ja Morant is someone who is in a profession that has global reach. He is in a profession that has massive impact in the community. And when you have a situation like Ja has, where this is your second offense in the matter of a month or so, I think that you have to kind of come down on this. And again, I'm not going to get into the Second Amendment and him holding a gun. I know it's not illegal that he has a gun. I get that. And their camp came out and said that was a toy gun, whatever it may be. The perception is that this is a real gun and that he was in the car after being in a strip club with a gun a couple of months ago. But this is about perception of the league, and this is conduct detrimental to the league. Okay? Back in the 1970s, the NBA was seen as a league that was rampant with drug use. Nobody watched the NBA at the time because, there are stories that people were like coked out actually playing games at that time. And if that was true, I don't know. I wasn't there. But there is that perception that the league was awful in the 1970s. There was drug use everywhere. Even in, I'm reading Jeff Pearlman's book right now, Showtime, which is the HBO show. Winning Time is based off of the 1980s, and they, even in the book and in the show, they talk about the drug use that some of the players had been used to at that point in time, when, of course, Magic and Larry came into the league and kind of changed the way that the NBA was perceived, and Magic Johnson had a huge impact in that. But with Ja Morant, you are in a place where not only I think that it is dangerous for you, because Memphis has a reputation, right? So it could actually be dangerous for you to be doing the things that you are doing. Okay? But as a league, you can't have one of your young star players doing this. And the same thing, it's kind of interesting because Ja Morant and Zion Williamson came into the draft together, the number 1 and number 2 overall picks, and they're both kind of going through some stuff right now with, well, and Zion's is a little bit different, obviously. But I think that 25 games is adequate. I wasn't going to be surprised if it wasn't more. If it was half the season, I would have thought that that was okay as well. I think that you have to set a precedent. And when you suspended him the first time, and it was only 8 games, it kind of showed me that, okay, well, he didn't think that 8 games was enough, that you were going to have to do more in this incident. So I think that 25 games is fair. I'm not going to argue that. I think that that is okay, and I think that the reports are he's going to be losing like $8 million because of his 25-game suspension, which is a lot of money. But when you are a face of a franchise that is worth probably $1 billion, you are held to a higher standard than any other person who's working at a gas station, at the grocery store, who runs a small restaurant in town. You are held to a higher standard. And when you are held to a higher standard, you have to be responsible for your actions. And I really, really, really hope that Ja Morant gets it together. I hope that these 25 games and the different programs that he has to complete with the NBA, I really hope that these help him, because he is a star in this league. He has a bright future. And I think that the NBA really wants to show him off because they know he's talented. They know he's a highlight reel. I think it was kind of all working out for Ja Morant to be one of the faces of the league here in the next couple of years, and this might change that. So I hope for his sake and the NBA's sake that they can figure this out and that Ja Morant can move forward after the suspension with no more incidences like this going forward. All right. That's it for this episode 2 of the Logan Ward Show. Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Going to have a video out here in the next couple of days about Nikola Jokic and why I think that he actually might be retiring soon. And I'll tell you that why here in the next couple of days, hopefully, with a new video on the YouTube channel. So be sure to subscribe to that. And we'll see you next time here on the Logan Ward Show. Peace.